Hi, everybody. Good morning, and thank you for attending this session on the Rhino Recovery Fund, which I'll quickly give an overview to you and see where we are with this. This is me. I've worked with rhinos for over 25 years. They are of my most favorite species. I've moved literally thousands of rhinos, immobilized them, and it's a real privilege now to be able to step into this role where the Rhino Recovery Fund was created as one of the newest funds with WCN to add value and collaborate with those partners out there already that are doing such good work on rhinos and collaborating with other donors. So our key aim is to protect rhinos from wildlife crime, which is their biggest threat, restore their landscapes because they are large pachyderms and need to roam large areas, improve their health of the population, and that's through good biological management. And then lastly, which is the most critical aspect that needs to be done in the long term, is to make sure that rhino conservation benefits people, local and society as a whole. As you can see from this slide, they occurred in 2 continents, Africa and Asia. There are 5 species left. Most of them are critically endangered, with 2 not so endangered, but I'll go through that in a second. We were very quick off the mark. We realized that with the COVID situation last year that we had to really step in and help where we can and augment other funders. So we have invested in 17 projects in 9 countries on 2 continents. You'll see the weighting of the projects is slightly more in those countries where there are more rhinos. And that trend will continue because we do need to ensure that there's healthy populations that we can then use for reestablishment in their previous ranges. So just to go into a bit of a deeper dive into the whole strategy, rhinos are pachyderms, very successful species if they can have landscapes in which they can live safely. So by creating safe landscapes that are linked and are large, we're not only ensuring that the rhinos are protected, but they will play their role in the ecological processes. And in that time, in that process, they will protect other species as well. This is very important. In areas where their habitats are heavily damaged, we're going to have to help with the restoration of landscapes. This is particularly true in Asia, where rhinos are not only threatened by poaching, but also by severe habitat loss, or even the recreation of new areas for them to move into. And then whatever we do with rhinos, if we don't have good protected area management, we are going to struggle. So protected area management is the majority of projects are supported in that manner. And for us to do that very successfully, we need to support the very people that are looking after the rhinos. We call them rhino guardians. They have to be well trained. They have to have the right equipment and the tools to be able to combat the wildlife criminals that are often highly specialized, highly dangerous, and we can't expect these people to function in a landscape where their lives are not protected and through good training. So we have rhino guardians in all the rhino landscapes that we're working in, fantastic people doing incredible work. And thank you for all the donors that are helping us, making sure that we can support these people. So these are some of the projects that we're already supporting: good equipment, good training, and in these particular areas, this particular project is doing an incredible job at protecting rhinos in a conglomerate of parks in South Africa. And to be able to bring all of this together, we have to ensure that we make rhinos relevant to people that live in and around with them and to society at whole. So this is a project, for example, in South Africa where rhinos are being rehabilitated after they were orphaned, and the project itself creates jobs and is increasing livelihood opportunities. And the asset test for a happy community where rhinos are existing is if you see them smile when you mention the word rhinos. That is our end goal that we want to achieve. And it's also the only way we're ultimately going to disrupt wildlife crime, which is the biggest cause of the demise of rhinos. It is a large illegal threat to wildlife all over the world. And it's the rhino horn that the poachers are after, very valuable, very difficult to reduce the demand. So our focus at this stage will be to try and disrupt illegal wildlife trade. And we've got a few projects that are focusing on this. Ultimately, when we can actually get it to the point where rhino horn no longer is sold in large numbers, hopefully we'll have sustainable and large areas where rhinos can occur again. So just a quick recap on the species: 2 in Africa, critically endangered black rhino, Their numbers have fortunately stabilized in the last 2 or 3 years and may even be increasing a little bit. Unfortunately, white rhino, which is the most numerous of all the rhinos, is still decreasing due to poaching. They're numerous, therefore more of them are being poached, and we need to stop that. In Asia, we've got 3 species, 2 of which are very critically endangered. The least endangered is the greater one-horned rhino in India. Their biggest challenge is to find more habitat and more parks where they can be moved to so that their numbers increase. Javan rhinos occur in a single park in Indonesia. So there's a real need to create a second park and increase the habitat in that park. And last but not least, the small little Sumatran rhino, critically endangered, unfortunately scattered in small populations through the island of Sumatra and a few individuals left in Borneo. It's going to be very difficult to turn them around from extinction, but there's quite a bit of effort going into doing that right now. So not all is lost. We have seen in the last 2 years that things are recovering slightly, but poaching is still constant, and we have to have as many projects that are going to recover rhinos. And with that, I would like to introduce you to some of the most dedicated and astute conservationists that I've come across in Africa. Hugo from the Westhuizen and his team from the Gonarezhou Conservation Trust, which is a partnership between Frankfurt Zoological Society and the Zim Parks of Zimbabwe. They're doing a fantastic job to use all of the fundamentals we've described early on in this, and what the Rhino Fund is going to focus on. And they are going to run you through what they need to do to ensure that they can safely reintroduce rhinos into the park. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Hugo and his team. Thank you, Hugo.
Thank you very much, Markus. That was a little bit of fun that we had in Gonarezhou a few months ago on the Jerusalem Challenge. My name is Hugo from the Westhuizen. I've been involved in conservation for the last 25 years, mainly in large protected areas, starting in South Africa. We did some work in Malawi and Zambia, in North Luangwa National Park, and based now in Gonarezhou National Park, where we are planning this very ambitious reintroduction program of black rhino. My interest and speciality lies in large protected areas, because large animals like elephant and rhino need space. And unfortunately, with human population growth as it is, we're losing space. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we're going about reintroducing a keystone species that's been absent out of this landscape for a long time. But just a bit of background on the park and where we are based. Gonarezhou National Park is in the southeast lowveld of Zimbabwe. It's 5,000 square kilometers. It's also part of the Great Limpopo Transfrontier Park with Kruger National Park in South Africa and Limpopo National Park in Mozambique. It's also very unique in the sense that it is managed by a co-management partnership between the Frankfurt Zoological Society and the Zimbabwe Parks and Wildlife Management Authority. And it is through the success of this partnership that we are now looking at reintroducing or embarking on such a very high-risk project such as a rhino reintroduction. So a little bit of history of black rhino in Gonarezhou National Park. Rhino went extinct for the first time in the 1930s and 40s when they were overhunted. Thereafter, a reintroduction program brought in about 77 animals in the late 60s, and they increased to about 150. By the mid-90s, that animals were completely wiped out through poaching. So we have not had rhino in Gonarezhou for the last 27 years. And why is it important? And also one might ask the question, why even embarking on a project like this? There's a number of reasons, and we've done feasibility studies in the park itself, but also from looking at a much wider rhino benefit perspective, where the last remaining strongholds of rhinos are becoming very isolated, and and it is so important to establish new populations. It has also got a hugely cultural importance, and one of our main partnerships in Gonarezhou is the communities around the park. And I'm going to introduce you to a very important colleague of mine, Herbert Pikela. He's the community liaison officer for Gonarezhou. He's from the community, and he's going to tell you a little bit why rhinos are so important for them.
As Gonarezhou Conservation Trust, we look at conservation as a two-way partnership between the community and the park, where we look at this relationship from a cost and benefit perspective, where we look at cost and benefits to the community of being a neighbor to the park, and cost and benefits to the park of being a neighbor to the community. And what are the benefits? This can be employment benefits. Out of the 300 employees of Gonarezhou Conservation Trust, 75% of them are from the local community. And we do have also a number of opportunities for the local community in the tourism sector, where we buy crafts from the community, where we employ locals to attend to our tourism facilities, as well as skills development, where we train some locals in certain programs like chef training. We also look at the cost in terms of human and wildlife conflict, and look at ways of mitigating the cost. And what is the benefit of reintroducing the rhinos in Gonarezhou National Park? Rhinos are of cultural significance to the Vatsonga or the Shangaan community, which are neighbor Gonarezhou Conservation Trust. Rhinos were regarded as a totem to the Shangaan or Vatsonga community, where they are regarded as a symbol of courage. And we do have a number of legendary stories, folklore, which relates to rhinos. So their absence for the past 27 years rendered all our intangible cultural heritage meaningless. Now that we are reintroducing rhinos, this is part and parcel of revitalizing our culture, and will also play a critical role in their conservation. Allow me to invite my colleague, Robizai Magwiro, our monitoring and evaluation officer, to share with you what she has. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Herbert. I'm happy to be here. Rhinos are not only important to the Shangaan culture, but they're also important to us as a nation and as Zimbabwe. The current population of black rhinos in the nation is very fragmented and in isolated places. As a result, these rhinos cannot physically move from one side to the next. Hence, this reintroduction program is also going to be important, as it is going to bring together individuals from 3 populations which are coming from isolated sites. This fragmentation is this reintroduction is going to then get rid of this fragmentation and improve the genetic diversity of these species. We're going to get rhinos from Malilangwe, Bubi Valley, and Save Conservancy. However, one might wonder how we're going to be able to do this when we have 3 sites which are isolated. Right, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to have a team of vets who are experts and professionals, and we'll have a helicopter which will be on standby. These rhinos will be immobilized through darting by these vets, and then the next thing we're going to have is a tracker which will be inserted in their horn, and once the tracker is inserted, it will be switched on, which will help us to monitor and evaluate these rhinos. The next thing is we're going to have these rhinos loaded into crates, and these crates are going to be loaded into a truck using a crane. I'm going to then hand over to Hugo to explain to you the sanctuary which I've built for these rhinos.
So as you can see, it's quite a process to get the rhinos from these populations to Gonarezhou. So preparations in Gonarezhou at the moment is we're putting up a fence area of about 550 square kilometers. And in the fence area will also be bomas that will, what we call holding pens, where the animals will be firstly offloaded and left for about 2 weeks, where they will be kept and monitored to make sure that they fit for their release into the sanctuary area. The fence itself is a very permeable fence. It allows other animals to go through. It just avoid the rhinos to move out of this area, and it also allows us then to provide much better protection in the sanctuary area. So what are the risks? Any reintroduction of any wild species is an enormous risk. I mean, there's always, and that's what I think as people that we need to understand, you know, the more we drive species into extinction, the more we need to find ways, and we have to find ways of having or reintroducing and reestablishing these animals. But it's not a natural process. It needs us as humans to intervene, and it's not easy. So there's always going to be risk with the actual translocation itself. Poaching is definitely going to be a risk. In the last 10 years alone, Africa lost more than 8,000 rhinos to poaching. And that certainly is going to be a big concern for us, and we will definitely make sure that our preparations can counter that. There's risk involved in regards to adaptation. The animals are coming from even though from relatively close proximity, they're coming from areas that are different from Gonarezhou. And black rhinos are very territorial. So the moment they're getting released, it's going to be, you know, like dropping Herbert in the middle of New York. He's going to find it difficult to find his feet. So it is going to be a bit of an adaptation to them. And then there's a risk of the rhinos breaking out. I mean, and that's why we will have a team and a helicopter on standby that we then are able to recapture that animal and bring it back into the sanctuary area. So our timeline is fairly tight. We're right now busy with fences and bomas. The plan is to start the capture of these animals and a translocation in May. It's a total of 30 animals. We'll probably be able to do maximum 2 animals in a day, but the actual release is a very systematic process because you want animals that sort of knows each other, that are comfortable with each other to be released in one area. And they're not very good dispersers. So once we release them, they will probably settle in relative close proximity to the boma. So we really need to manage that and closely monitor that process. And hence the need for very experienced and specialized people in this whole project. I think the important thing that I can conclude on is, and probably the most important thing that I would say for any reintroduction program of this magnitude, is the teamwork and cooperation between people. This is not a one-man show. I think you've heard today from 3 of us representing 300 people in the park, but it's much bigger than that. I mean, we've got share or stake or partnerships with communities, as Herbert explained. We've got partnerships with the places where these rhinos are coming from, as Rumbi explained. And we've also got partnerships with donors such as yourself, which without this would not have been possible. So from our side, working in Gonarezhou, all we can say is thank you very much to the WCN and the Rhino Recovery Fund. This is not just the financial support, but really quite heartening to know that there are people such as yourself that really care about Africa and care about helping us to reintroduce a very important species to its formal historic home range. Thank you very much.